Death in real estate. Let's talk about it from my personal experience dealing with my parents, inheriting a property, not knowing what to do, not having dealt with wills and estates and all of that. So here it is. Nobody ever wants to talk about it, but you have to, because guess what? It's happening to all of us. At some point, we're going to die and we are going to pass on an inheritance, maybe not, but you don't know how many people I have come to me and ask me about, what do I do now? So I'm going to say this. When you start to see your loved ones declining in health, if you are going to be their point person, meaning you're taking care of them, you are going to be the executor of their estate, you need to find out, because sometimes you won't always know. And I would say for this, in this instance, my mom died in 2012. My dad followed her in 2014, and then he died. I would have never expected that my dad was going to die before my mom. And, you know, life is funny. And God does have a sense of humor. So when things happen, you just have to take note of the signs. Later on, maybe we'll get into guardianship and conservatorship, because that's a whole nother thing. And if you have loved ones, like, you don't, that shouldn't even be a thing for you, because you should be in their lives and you should be present. And when you see them declining, then you need to be there for them through every step of the way. Now, fast forward, once again, didn't think that my dad was going to die before my mom. Mom, within 2 months, declined. And let's face it, when you get to a certain age, we live in America, everybody's on meds. My personal belief, one med, you get entangled in this web of meds. So if you have one, and then you have two, you have three, four, how many of us are on several different medications, and you don't know how they're going to affect you? And now you're depending on these to live your life. So sometimes you have medical scares, you get over it. You know, cycle, rinse and repeat. And so we all go through things, and you never think that it's going to be your last rodeo. But with my mom, she had had several issues in the past, but she had always gotten over it. And so I would say within 2 months' time, she just started to decline. And then when I thought that she was going to get better, she did not. So 2012, she died. And then my dad, and I knew that my dad was sicker than he let on, but it wasn't until mom got sick that he then got scared. So now he's divulging all this information to me. And for any of you who have old school parents, my dad was born in 1935. My mom was born in 1946. They were 11 years apart. My dad was not open about anything. He didn't want to tell anyone anything. His side of the family, very closed off. Don't want to talk about the medical treatments, the health issues, none of that. So when they die, they die. That's just it. Next thing you know, you're getting an invite to a funeral. Okay, so dad was not open, and he was not open about his finances. Now, I said he was born in 1935. He is very closed off about his finances. He's not talking about his finances. He very Scroogey with his money, not going to let you know what's going on with his money, where it's invested, all of these other things, not talking about it, completely closed mouth. And it wasn't until his doctor said there was nothing else that they could do for him that he decided to allow me a window into his finances, his financial situation. Mom, on the other hand, was very open about everything, would tell you everything. Her funeral and everything, all of that was just clean cut, dry. Literally, it was like 2 pages. She did have a will. And now I'm the only child, so everything was left to me, but everything was also left on me to deal with. So I was the executor of her estate, and I was the executor of my dad's estate. But before we get into dad, so dealing with mom, one thing I'm going to tell all of you all, you do need to talk to your elders, your parents, your aunts, grandparents, whoever it is that you are in charge of. And if they're thinking of leaving it to you, you need to have the hard conversation, and you do need to press them for the information. Death and real estate. It's what nobody wants to talk about. It does not have to be complicated. It can be clean, cut, and dry. If you're leaving something to someone, you owe it to them to go over the details about this, because real estate is the biggest transaction that most of us will deal with in our lifetimes, and it's what everybody is working for. People are not working to own cars. They're not working to pay their rent. Most people are working because they have this asset that they're working to keep, and they need to pay the bills to keep this asset. And if you live in the DMV area, you know that on average you're dealing with at least $500,000 worth of asset. So going back to mom, everything was clean, cut, and dry. And I never really questioned dad, because I just thought that dad was going to die before mom. And so then mom, the assets would pass on to mom, and then I would deal with it then, because she would just tell me everything and we would go through it together. But that's not the way it happened. And usually in life, there's always a curveball, and in death, there's a curveball. Nothing is just straight, clean. It's not an easy path. So after mom died, dealt with her, she had a small estate, but everything was left to dad. So I didn't have to deal with it then. But then also too, just to let you know, when you're dealing with a funeral, everything is due up front. If the insurance hasn't kicked in, which it usually hasn't, because it takes a while for you to prove you are who you are, and you are the executor, and then you have to go through the orphans court and all that stuff. And so just to let you know, like, yes, they can have insurance, but is that going to kick in? So when you're dealing with a funeral home, just remember that. Now, my mom already knew who she wanted to use as her funeral home, which was also my granny's funeral home, Nana's funeral home, and now it was mom's funeral home. And I already knew that I was going to use them. And they were excellent in helping me to go through everything. But once again, those are connections that my parents already had in place. It was easier for me because these things were in place. Had I not known these people, had I not dealt with generations of my family using them before, it would not have been that simple. Fegley, all of that, it doesn't kick into after. You got to write this check right now. You want to bury your parents, you want to have a service, you got to write the check right now. So thankfully, dad was still alive and he had the funds to do it. But even he was not prepared to write the check, because he's thinking, oh, insurance will cover it. Once again, he didn't know how this was supposed to play out, because he thought he would be gone, and he probably just thought everything would kick in once he died and blah, blah, blah. And then, but that's not how it happened. So then dealing with my dad's death, I had never talked to, I won't say I didn't talk to my dad about money. He was just not open to talking about money. And like I said, it wasn't until the doctor said there was nothing that they could do for him, that's when he started to open up, because he knew he was on his way out. Okay. So when you're dealing with parents, elders, whoever, you need to know their funds. And of course, my dad, now I'm the only child. Did he think that I was going to steal from him or take his money? Not necessarily, but it's just the mentality. He wanted to hold on to everything until the day that he died. But he knew at some point he was going to have to give it over to me, because I was going to have to step in and be him. I was going to have to handle the finances. And you all know what I'm talking about. I'm not the only person that deals with this. You all have family members who are old school. They're the same way. They want to keep control of that money, their assets. And they think that no one else knows how to deal with those assets the best way except for them. So me being his daughter, even though I'm in real estate, even though I had been licensed since 2007, I had talked to him about investments, and he was just straight 401k, retirement. I'm not going to invest. I'm not going to do this. I wish I knew then what I know now, because I would have pressed him for that. He was retired. His retirement check was what some people would probably have made in a year on a salary. He was vested. He was Army. He was DOT. My mom worked for the Soldiers Home. She retired from the VA hospital in DC. I wish that I knew then what I know now, because I would have pressed him, because I would have invested every check he was getting. And mind you, at this time, I did not need his money, because I had my own. I was working a full-time job. I was with a government contractor. I had my own, so I didn't need it, but I would have invested that money, because once they die, those checks are not coming in. They're not coming to you. You're not the spouse. My dad was getting my mom's, I think it was Social Security, plus his Social Security, plus his retirement check. And it makes me crazy now. But anyway, moving forward, once he did allow me in and allow me to have access to his funds, then I was able to do for him, pay bills, pay his bills, pay, medical, up until the day that he died. Now, what I did not expect to get was a binder that, I'm not kidding, was like this thick, that had his will, that had his estate. And you would think, we're not talking a lot. It was just a lot of paperwork. It was a lot of if this, then that, blah, blah, blah. But guess what? His will had not been updated since I think I was 8 years old. Now, I'm sure that his attorney had talked to him and told him, we need to update, because usually you're going to reach out to your clients like every, I would say 3 to 5 years, and say like, hey, we need to update. He did not. I knew who his attorney was. I knew a little bit about Dad's finances and things like that, but once again, he would never talk about it. He didn't want anyone to know what he had. He always lived beneath his means, and that's fine. But when you get to this point in your life, you need to just divulge. Let everybody know, hey, this is where I am, this is this, that's that. We're talking about me fumbling through hundreds of pages of documents. He had so many people lined up to inherit what he had that all of them had died, okay? So, and the ones that were still alive, and luckily, like I said, I'm the only child, but I was not first in line, because it was literally all of his sisters, all of his brothers, then I think like his nephew, and then, but thankfully they signed it over to me. There was no hassle. There was no protest. I didn't have to go. They just like, hey, the house was not even in my name. I think it was like in his sister's name. She's like, and the sister is not even local, lives in a completely different state. Everyone signed everything over to me, but then guess what? I didn't know what to do. And you're talking about when you're inheriting stuff, you are going through this funnel by yourself. I did learn quickly that it was easier for me to do most of the footwork. So I ended up telling the lawyer that I didn't need their service anymore. I don't want to say I fired them because it wasn't a bad judgment or anything. It's just that when you're dealing with a lawyer, they have other clients. They have to block time off in their schedule to go to the courthouse. And in this particular instance, the lawyer was in Laurel. I'm closer to the courthouse. I'm like, well, I'll just go over there. It's easier for me. So I decided to handle everything myself. And by the way, when you have to go to the orphans court over in Upper Marlboro, sit, listen, talk to them, be friends with them. They will point you in the right direction and get you to where you need to go. So I say all of this to say, I see so many people get into situations where their loved ones has died and now they have a property. They don't know where to go. They don't know what to do. They think their loved one had a will. Maybe they didn't, maybe they don't. But especially if you're dealing with other siblings, and there's usually one, I don't care if there's 3 siblings, 5 siblings, there's usually one that takes the burden of everything. What I will say is if you are now sitting with the property, your loved one has died, you don't know what to do, you can reach out. Based on what I have gone through, and I would never give anyone advice. If I haven't gone through it, then I would just refer you to someone else that had the advice. But I now have connections. You need title attorneys. I have them. I would be happy to just refer you. You don't have to sell a property with me or anything, but it's crucial because real estate is a network, period. Real estate is not just a transaction. It's not just a sign on the dot, okay, we sold it and now you go on your way, I go on my way. Real estate is a network, and anyone who knows me knows I'm an investor before I am a realtor. I got my license because I intended to be an investor. And I know the business, I know the ins and outs. And if it were not for my parents leaving me the property that I have, I've been able to do so much with this property. I have rented property, I have bought other properties. If you have a property that you are inheriting, I would say hold on to it. I would say do not sell it. Don't sell it. Hold on to it. You can leverage it. You can rent it out. You can take loans off of it to get you into other positions of real estate that you normally would not have. People work a lifetime to pay off their properties. People are not working to pay off cars. Anybody can get a car. Anybody can get an apartment. People are chasing that American dream. While you might have this property, you don't know what to do with it. There are people that you can get in touch with that can help you. Now, most of you are probably going to be strapped by the time you get the property. You just need to pay off loans. You need to pay off whatever debt you have. Put your kids through college. This is going to help. This is going to be a jump start to to something else. But if you can, keep the property. I would never tell anyone to, especially if there's equity in it. If there's like 75% equity or above, keep it. Like, why would you sell it? Because that's 75% of equity that you can use to buy into other things, that you can use for loans. I would not, don't ever tap all of it out, because once you tap it out, then, that doesn't make any sense. You always want to keep some equity in it so that in a hard place, you can borrow off of it. That's my tip and that's my experience. And I know, especially during the holidays, it's not easy. I have known several close friends and family members who have lost loved ones in the past few months. It's never easy. But real estate is the gift that keeps on giving. And you want to try to hold on to your asset, because banks are just swallowing up, corporate is swallowing up all of the assets that we have known as real estate. And if someone is giving it to you, whatever small hoops that you have to jump through to get the property, do it. It's not easy. I've gone through it myself, but this has allowed me and has carried me through the years, above and beyond. And I'm so thankful to my parents who had an asset that they saw worthy to even pass to me. But I'm so thankful that I knew enough about real estate to take this and leverage it and make the right investments, because at the end of the day, I'm always an investor. I'm always looking at the numbers. I always want to know what's next, what's happening in the market. And that's a true investor. Forget about the realtor title. I can help people sell and buy houses all day, because you're talking about investing and you're talking about knowing the numbers, how to leverage what's going on in the economy. Is this neighborhood a good investment? Because remember, there is a different market in every state, in every zip code, in every neighborhood, depending on what's going on. There is not one real estate market for your territory. So I'm going to leave you with that. And this is just hopefully a blessing to all of you who are dealing with death in real estate. And for those of you that have siblings, do not fight over the real estate. Everyone needs to get their fair share of the real estate. And I would say work to keep the asset, to figure out how you all can benefit from it, whether you're going to rent it out, renting out to an individual. You might want to rent out to, in this area, we have a lot of people PCSing in. It could be military. It could be people in the tech industry. They're coming in. They need a place to rent out before they decide to move into a house. We have nurses in the DMV area. Rental property is always going to be a key asset. It will always bring you revenue. So while you might say you don't want to live in your parents' house, that's fine, but there's someone who will. And I will say with this, you do not always have to do a complete, full, top of the line dollar renovation. You might want to do a prehab. Put some money into it, make it look good, but you don't have to do the quartz countertops and all of that. You might just have to put some paint on the walls, spruce up some things, and it's still a viable asset for somebody else to rent. Maybe you do need to sell it, but if you sell it and you're thinking about bringing it up to the top of the line, remember there's always a market too for the middle. Not everybody can afford that top of the line renovation. I've done it myself, and that's why I'm talking about it. Because there's so many different ways to flip real estate, and I think at this point in my life I've done pretty much everything. I've lent to commercial, I've done the wholesale, I've done the flip, I've done the Airbnb, and I've been very fortunate in all of my investments. I've even rented out part of my house that I live in to other people who are nurses, who are military. You know, they come and go, but I've always been very fortunate, and I wanted to share this with you all because I want you all to be successful in your endeavors. And remember, Death is not easy, and it never is just a straight arrow. And I wish you the best.